Lloyd Brown, welcome to Why Wells Fail,
Afternoon, Steve.
where we talk about all the ways to prevent wells from failing. But you got to know why. You got to know your why. What's your why, Lloyd?
Well, our company's why and my why is to help our customers maximize the revenue that they can get from their resource in the in a way that is predictable, it's understandable, and that it's a continuous process of learning from what we did today, so we can impact tomorrow.
Yeah, that's excellent. So you guys have been in this industry a long time. This is a rough and tumble, the way I see it. If you watch Landman, that's the way I see it, right? It's rough and tumble. And no, but there's a lot of a lot of reputations on the line, and who they pick to support them in this situation is really important. And you have your why lined out, and you have the process forward. Your plan is called
The Pathfinder Prediction Process. It's a patent pending. It's trademarked. It's patented, along with multiple follow-along patents that are describing and other mechanisms that we're mitigating utilizing our process. So it's exciting time. And Steve, we're going to talk about a couple of different things today. But one of the things that I've had asked multiple times is, it seems like about every 6 or 7 years, what was tried in the past is tried again. And when we talk about rule number 10, the learning rule, the foundation of the book I wrote, Refined by Failure, and then also what we practice here at Refined Completions. The whole thing is maintaining that knowledge base over generations. And one of the challenges is, in our industry especially, is we start seeing the same methods and messages that were out there 10, 11 years ago. And you're like going, it didn't work back then. Why are we recycling? And what it says is that we've done a really poor job as an industry of practicing the EDGE method of explain, demonstrate, guide, and enable over the generations. And we're not allowing ourselves to learn and retain the learning. We may have the ability to get information, but we're not transferring the knowledge that gives us the ability to make informed, educated decisions. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Institutional knowledge is, when I went to school, and I was able to study a couple of things, but, in Russia and in China, in specific, when they had those revolutions, the first thing they did was like destroy all their history. And so all that institutional knowledge, how to farm, how to do this, all the good things get destroyed, and then they start over. And then there's famines, and there's gulags, and there's all these other things that come out of that. And it's you're right. Bell bottoms will never fit in this picture ever again.
They might. Now when we go to fashion, we never learn our lessons, right? That's a perfect place. When the mullet came back, I'm like, oh, dude, that wasn't good in the 80s, and we're doing it again.
Right.
But it does trend, and to our subject for today, it really does tie to, looking at what we're doing and the success or failure of a well being luck. You ought to know what you got before you ever frack it. You ought to know what the resources, you ought to know what the mechanisms of failure are that are going to keep you from getting that resource back. And the disruption that we cause, it is predictable, it is measurable, and the results that we get are the promise that we can provide.
So I love the term dynamic equilibrium. You've explained it many times, but humor me again, and let's talk about what happens when you're bringing things back into equilibrium.
Well, one of the things that nature does, and equilibrium is evidence of that. It's a natural law that when things get disrupted from a state that they are in, where there's not wanting to be a transfer of electrons, there's not wanting to be an environment for materials to change from one state to another, that's a place of stasis or equilibrium. When we frack, we change all the metrics that go in. We add in a place that's already got temperature. In many ways, it's got some pressure, but we increase the amount of pressure, and then we introduce a fluid that is full of oxygen. So we've got a state of the geology where it's called an anaerobic state. It's without oxygen, and we put that in there, and oxygen, just like it degrades our bodies, degrades the geology. And our job is to take what we've done intentionally, fracking, cracking the rock, getting it to where it can release its resource into a wellbore, is to find a state of balance or dynamic equilibrium. I had my knee replaced 2 weeks ago, and I'm at the rehab facility, and the guy's working with me, and he brings these little Bosu balls. You know what a half Bosu ball is? It's this little rubber ball, and he's like, all right, we got to see if you've still got the ability to be balanced with this knee that's been replaced. And so he's putting me on there, and he's standing behind me, and he's got guide bars and everything. And first thing I do, I get on there, and I'm like, oh, this is no big deal. Well, then he goes, close your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And then he took me through a series of steps, and I had to find that place of balance or equilibrium in a new dynamic state with a new knee, right? And so I'm doing that. That's what we're doing when we frack a well. We're wanting to find it to where we have the balance. And like me, I want to still be able to walk. I want to be able to run. I want to be able to do the things that I truly enjoy. Well, when we're working on a well and we're finding that balancing point, you can't even see my hands. I got to bring them up higher, but we find that point of balance. Balance for us is creating enough stability to allow for the free flow of water, hydrocarbon, and then the associated natural gases that are coming off with it.
Yeah, and then to leave the bad gases and
That's
leave
correct.
all the other things that would mess
That's
up
how we
the story.
prove that we've brought that true dynamic equilibrium is that we've suppressed or abated the dissolution of carbonate, which makes CO2, the dissolution of pyrite and anhydrite, which makes H2S, and we keep those minerals stable on the geology while we still allow for the migration of all the hydrocarbons that we're used to, the gas that you burn in your home, the natural gas you burn, what you burn in your tank, and even so much so the asphalts that we drive on. Ultimately, we need those to migrate out of the wellbore, because if they stay, they end up blocking the ability of that well to produce over a long period of time.
So these discussions that we're having on a regular basis, now we're defining this institutional knowledge around dynamic equilibrium and how to not go back and do what was trendy back in the 80s or whatever you were mentioning or referring to at the beginning.
Oh, absolutely. And, ultimately it's not even the 80s. It's 10 years ago. It's 2015, 2016. It's crazy how quickly we lose in our institutional knowledge. And if you look at our industry, when I grew up in the 60s, 70s, 80s, up until Boone Pickens came along and brought disruption into the industry, when we started seeing these leverage takeovers and this consolidation of companies, and that's where we're at today. We've got all these companies, and so many times the older folks that still have the institutional knowledge, before they're able to transfer it, they no longer have a job in that organization or the combined organization. And so that creates challenges. But, one of the things our motto is, our last well teaches our next. It's a constant state of gathering the information, the data on how the wells perform. And now with the acceleration we're getting through AI to help us do the analytics, and instead of a person having to put their eyes on it, having machine learning to help us see what we might be missing. It's the last really 5 months have been just an unbelievable next level acceleration of learning.
Yeah, it's crazy. I have a client. His company does those visual scans. They scan a horse or a vet or a dog, and the doctors, they have a bias, and their eyes immediately go and they study certain areas. That's just what your brain's designed to do: conserve energy and get to the point. But these AIs, they can find other patterns that your bias prevents you from noticing. And that's awesome that you guys are wrapping that into what you're delivering.
Absolutely.
And so the conversations you're having, this instead of like doing their best guess, is that what you would call the I guess, if there was a name for whatever this trend that comes back around every once in a while, is it best guess?
It's snake oil. It's looking for one thing. It goes back to oh gosh, Billy Crystal, and everybody thinking there's that one thing. It's not. Right now, we know it's 5 things, and ratios of those 5 things, right? And so, one of the challenges is there's a quote unquote new chemistry, and there's not one answer. And could there be one day? Possibly. Based on my life experience and what we continue to learn, though, now when you've got a multiple of factors, you have to measure it to understand what you're doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. There's no silver bullet. Yeah. So now, well, there is one thing, a process that we could get in place and get the process in, figure out the plan, know what you have, and know what you're going to get.
That's right. Well, learning's not, some learning is almost instantaneous, right? When you're a kid, you touch a hot stove, you learn really quick not to touch a hot stove. Or, back in the day, sticking something in a light socket and wasn't a good event, right? Those are instantaneous learnings through pain. We don't want to learn through pain if we can keep from it. And especially with the amount of capital that is at risk, when companies drill and complete a well, why would you have a process that doesn't predict success or failure, or help you understand what the promise is of the geology that you're specifically going after? And a process is something that takes time. A silver bullet is something you think that kills with one shot. And that's not predictable, because what if you miss?
Yeah. And the odds are you're going to.
And then you have the whole thing where somebody just shotguns it, but they don't know why they're shotgunning it. And then you end up using too much of a good thing that becomes a bad thing. And again, like you said, you become biased to the one thing because you're getting an evidence that you're making an impact when, and one of those is like scale inhibition. A lot of companies will pump a lot of scale inhibitor because they want to get a residual at the surface, having no idea what the impact that they've done on that geology. And they've actually exasperated the problem that they have in the geology because that chemistry specifically doesn't like a certain aspect of the geology, and it goes to town to degrade it. But you feel good because you've got a residual of that chemical at the surface, and you think, oh, I'm getting protected because I have that. And that's applying surface knowledge and saying that it applies subsurface. And in the early 2000s in the Barnett Shale, in the Dallas area, we made that mistake really all the time. We took all this institutional surface knowledge, water knowledge, chemistry knowledge, and we applied it downhole without going, what's different?
There's a lot.
We've learned there's a whole lot.
I've learned there's a whole lot. There's pressure. There's a bunch of heat going on down there too.
Originally, we thought that, hey, it's better to put as fresh water downhole as we possibly could. And boy, did we accelerate the disruption like nobody's business. Because in chemistry, the first thing that you learn is water is the universal solvent. And one of the most corrosive substances to metals is distilled water. And it's because it absorbs every gas that there is in the atmosphere and it accelerates. Well, we look back at it and you're going, what were you thinking? And again, we were using one system of learning and apply it to something that we didn't take the time to really study.
So now we got a plan. We got a patented plan, a patented process, a process patent.
That's right.
What a time to be refined. So, so if you're not talking to Lloyd, what are you doing? You're shooting in the dark.
I wouldn't say it's not in the dark. I've not experienced this. I've never had a cataract, but I have had a bad prescription in my glasses. And when it got improved, man, I was like, oh, heck, I can see that again. I can read that little word. I don't have to hold it all the way out here. And we have blinders. We have some blinders we intentionally put on. We might even have what seems like a cataract. We have a bias, the word you used, that doesn't let us see what we need to see. We've also had some bad teaching or teaching that is from 15 years ago and is ignoring what we've learned up to this date. And so, I don't want to impugn anybody's integrity or character about that they're in the dark, but they haven't been exposed to the fullness of what we've learned to this place. And again, I'm not attempting to be arrogant in any way, shape, matter, or form. It's just the over compelling results that we have and the ability to show those results and predict the results, which is even more important, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's not a surprise when you get what you get.
Lloyd's why is to help you protect your reputation, and there's your reputation, your company's reputation's on the line. Your employees are on these. If you miss, he wants to help you run your operation better, get more carbon and gas out of the hole. He wants you to help your equipment last longer, right? And then
I mean, there's the law of compounding that goes both ways, right? And there's compounding impacts that we've learned that we're making a real difference, not only on the upfront operational or the capital investment that is made by an operator, but we're also impacting the long-term lease operating expense and driving those dollars and numbers lower.
all right, Lloyd, someone's been listening and they're convicted. They know they should reach out to you. What's the best way to go about this?
Well, the first way is, at Refine C. Lloyd B through either LinkedIn, on our YouTube channel. And the second way is lloyd.brown@refinecompletions.com. And of course, just go to our website, refinecompletions.com, and hit one of those lovely buttons that says, hey, I want more information. Tell me more. And we will make that happen.
Awesome. So I have to confess, I did a presentation this last week and had to dress up, Lloyd. And so one of my shirts I tried on, I hadn't tried it on in 10 years. And those collars, they were out here. I thought it was a girl shirt when I couldn't believe I wore that shirt before. So don't be like me. Don't try to go on stage with old fashioned. Show up in the right fashion. Let Lloyd help you.
Well, that was in another state that you probably looked like you were still in fashion, but I'm not going to say which one that was.
That's fun.
By the way, Ricky Bobby, did you hear about that? Yeah, he came out and he changed. He says, I had to change my saying. He goes, if you ain't first, you're Canada.
All right, that's a wrap.
Sorry for all you hockey players.
All right, we'll see you next week on